All right, today is Tuesday, June 9th, around noon. We're going to continue my new type of table read experience, whatever you want to call it. Today's album is called the Vulture Prince. In preparing for this today, I very, very quickly read through The Prophet again, Khalil Gibran, because I felt like I did that when I wrote this story. This could be a story fit for a children's book, so it's kind of unusual. But it's basically just a morality tale, a fairy tale. It kind of has a Middle Eastern flavor, almost like a genie type of story. That's kind of what I was going for. Not that I have a lot of knowledge of that stuff. But as a kid, when I was a kid at least, going to school or a library, finding books that were interesting just based on the cover, and I think this one could work like that. I put a lot of time in the actual book cover of this, actually, and the album cover for the music. I forget where it really came from. One of my doodles that went somewhere I didn't expect it to go, which is how it usually happens. The Vulture Prince, I don't really know how it formed that way, besides I needed to change it to something else. It began as a punk rock type of an experience way long ago. Maybe, yeah, I'm reading from my book right now, and I think it was around 2017. And I was trying to come up with some new songs, and I wanted to write heavy punk political themed songs for some reason back then. And I titled it The Last Punjabi Prince. I thought it'd be some Indian story that I could develop, a punk rock Indian album, which sounds stupid as shit, but it could be cool. But it didn't go anywhere. There's times when I try to develop something that I know is just not going to work. And other times I'll be able to draw from those failures and make it into something else, which is what happened in this case. Not like this is some huge success or anything, but it has the potential to be not just music, but a children's book about generosity and anti-racism and anti-cruelty, because it takes part in that time of history where there were still pharaohs and kings, which is still a reality for a lot of people. People say that about America, I guess. They have those rallies nowadays. But, you can't compare it to medieval times, like in Songs from the Rhine, where kings could just kill people just to make a statement. I guess that still happens. You could turn that collateral damage. There's different methods of cruelty, and I think the way the media is and the way information can flow, you can hide cruelty easier than, in King Henry VIII's time, whatever the hell was going on back then in various kingdoms and fiefdoms. What the hell is a fiefdom? That's a word, right? If Twitter was around during like King Henry VIII and shit like that, things would get weird. What is a fiefdom? I should probably know a word before I say it. A fiefdom is a estate. Yeah, it's just feudalism. It's just feudalism. It's an estate controlled by a feudal lord, like a landlord. All right. I just never knew what that actual term meant. But that's where I'm going with this story. You can make a morality tale in present times, and that's fine and dandy. There's a movie called Three Kings with George Clooney. That's kind of a morality tale. I think that's what it's called. Speaking of Middle East type of storylines and settings, I remember watching that. It was pretty good. Way back, 99, Three Kings, a black comedy with George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, Ice Cube, yeah. Spike Jonze, directed by David O. Russell. Yeah, they try to steal Kuwaiti gold. I don't remember the whole plot, but I think it is kind of like a morality tale. Whatever crazy shit they get into. It was a big success. Yeah, made over $100 million. Maybe that's something I have to watch again since it just popped in my head. And I didn't even consider talking about it. When you can make a morality tale based on something you're not familiar with, just from consuming other people's versions of that area of the world, like as an American, I've left the country before, but not on my own like people do in college or other points, a semester abroad, or they just go backpacking through Europe. Crazier people like that guy I mentioned before. He has a YouTube channel, Kurt Kaz, and he's pretty nuts, man. He'll go to Iraq. He'll go to like I don't know New Guinea, some tribal village, and he just has no fear. I don't know if he has some special spirit looking over him, but he'll just wander through South America, Africa, Europe, Middle East. I think he was in Egypt showing off the pyramids just as a tourist, and he just documents all of his experiences, the people he meet. It's really good. Um, but that's not me. I don't know if I could do stuff like that. Um, I'm planning to move across the country, and I'm comfortable enough to do that by myself. But to just travel to another country, that's a little bit more crazy, in my opinion. But when I write a story like this, I'm writing it, in the perspective of things I've consumed in my life. Even if you want to say Aladdin, some people think Aladdin was a racist, stereotypical story. I don't know. That tends to be a general theme for a lot of classic literature. You could say that about what, like the Jungle Book. Maybe there's some racism in that. I remember looking at that not too long ago, and well, this is according to whoever you get the source from. Is Aladdin a racist story because it has kind of stereotypical depictions of the Middle East and stuff? Is Aladdin a racist movie? Well, this is Google. It's widely considered problematic for promoting racist and, quote, Orientalist stereotypes. While many enjoy the film for the nostalgia, music, and characters, blah, 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 critics argue that the story relies on harmful cliches depicting Arab cultures as barbaric and using exaggerated light skin features for heroes. So these are all things you don't think about as a kid. I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it. Maybe there's some truth if I heard a different perspective from somebody. I don't know how to really compare that to my Italian heritage. If, like the Fat Tony on The Simpsons, does that offend me? Or, I don't know, somebody vandalizes a Columbus statue. No, I don't give a shit at all. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how that would feel if I was of Arab descent, Middle Eastern. I grew up somewhere like that. Would I be offended by a Disney movie like that? I really don't know. I can read this, and I don't know where they're getting these sources from. This is from Google, from the Australian Broadcast, wherever they got this from. Australian Broadcasting Corporation and some other ones. There's a lot of different articles discussing if it's kind of fucked up. I don't know. But hopefully I don't go that way. I don't think so. I could have set this story in New Jersey. I could have set this story in Canada, Mexico, South America, anywhere. It's a simple story. There's been plenty of tyrants in America. I don't know about Canada. Mexico has had revolutions. South America, it's like a constant thing. Dictators. Spain, Italy had fascism. Germany, of course. Throughout the Middle East, I'm sure there's been. You could look at Russia if you want to say that. You could make this story, set it anywhere. So I'm not trying to depict a certain culture in any kind of bad or good light. The Vulture Prince became a story like that because I pictured it in the desert. And when I think of the desert, I think of the Middle East and Africa. I didn't really say where this story takes place, but that's how I vision it. It does have like a genie involved. And when I think of a genie, I think of Middle Eastern stuff. I think of that type of folklore. Just like I thought of sirens and I thought of Lorelei as a German folklore. I don't know if genies really exist in other non-Arab cultures. Are genie myths just for Arab nations? Are genie myths only in Arab or Middle Eastern folklore? I don't even know if is there folklore? Yeah. It is a form of mythology. Maybe it's some kind of spiritual thing. No, genie myths are beyond Arab folklore. The concept of the genie, known as the jinn, and that's in American Gods, that show, which is a book, but I didn't read the book. The concept of the genie comes from the pre-Islamic Arabian religion, but heavily incorporates supernatural spirit or demon lore from Middle Eastern, Persian, and Mesopotamian traditions. So it's kind of like spirits and demons, wind spirits, demons. This reminds me of my story Garrity. In the story Garrity, I had wind demons, but it was a symbolic way to show frequency, the potential for harm that frequency can deliver to a society through broadcasting either and some kind of a message, propaganda, some kind of a harmful wavelength. There's a movie that specifically went that direction. So that's what I was going for, but I guess that's another way to term it, as a wind demon, a wind spirit, like the famous Pazuzu, sorry, I don't know what these words are considered precursors to the concept of the jinn, Jinn. Jinn are also in Persian mythology, where they're known as Div or Pari, D-I-V or P-A-R-I. I don't know if I'm even saying that correctly. The familiar trope of a jinn granting rewards to kind humans and punishing the greedy is a staple in these Persian folk tales. So yeah, it's a cool type of a fairy tale. I'm sure you can compare that to something else, fairies. I found a book in a thrift store a while ago, years ago, about fairies and a different type of fairies in folklore and elves. Terence McKenna talks about that, the machine elves, but that's probably something different than ancient folklore. Maybe those people writing stories like this were taking drugs, psychedelics, and they were able to expand their consciousness and create these imaginative descriptions. There's some truth to that. I'm never going to say you need to do any kind of drug to be creative, because I'm against that. I'm still ready to get that tattoo as soon as I get to that point to be able to get a tattoo. I'm going to get the straight edge thing on the back of my neck, because I do believe in that you don't need to have drugs or anything else to create or use your imagination. But maybe years from now I'm going to get stuck, and this is no way promoting drug use, but it's something I might want to try at some point in my life. I don't judge people who do it. If you need to escape, even cigarettes. Stephen King, I think that was the story I heard, that he quit smoking, and for a while, like, he couldn't write anything because smoking, whatever chemicals are in there, gives you some kind of a release to forget about your bullshit, other people's bullshit, and just focus on your task. Like an ADD type of thing. It could, um, I guess that's why some comedians would do that, either take a drink, or musicians do that, writers do the same thing, but I've never done that. The fruit of my labor, I've never felt satisfied. Like, I need to have some kind of drug in my system. Maybe it was coffee for a little bit. And I did smoke cigarettes, but not when I was doing any of this stuff. When I would write music, I would never be high or anything. It just, well, I lived in a suburban community. It's not something I wanted to do anyway, but it wasn't the right type of environment to do any kind of drugs. The only way I would do peyote or ayahuasca, if that was something that comes up, would be one of those spiritual ceremonies. I'm not going to be doing it in an apartment building. Like, anything could happen to have a bad trip at that point. Especially when you don't know what you're doing. That would be my case. I would do it by myself. And I would want to totally expand the experience as beautifully as possible, like a religious ceremony. I think that's how you're allowed to do things like that, if you do it as a religious ceremony, because it is a religious ceremony for a lot of cultures. In America, I guess it's more of the Native American, maybe Mexican tradition. But I don't think you need any of that. There's plenty of examples of people who can write, make music, who are weird enough, man. I'm weird as shit. And I don't need anything else. I just need the freedom to be able to do it. The freedom and the money to just let go of my inhibitions and all the voices of negativity. You don't need drugs for that, to clear your head. I would say that could actually have the opposite effect to some people. It make you more paranoid, make you more closed-minded or narrow-minded. Your focus will suffer. You'll become too dependent on it, depending on the drug. Even coffee, yeah. Maybe you just like the taste of coffee, so I guess it's really the caffeine that could fuck you up. But yeah, it was good that I went that direction so I could prove it to myself. I quit smoking in 2020 and quit a lot of other stuff. And that's when I was having my creative explosions. My creativity was just manic, where I had to get these thoughts out as quickly as possible. And it was a weird experience. I don't think drugs would have helped me. But again, I'm not judging other people. If that's your thing, everyone's going to handle it differently. I'll go back to a baseball example. I forget who it was. Maybe David Wells. He's kind of a chubbier pitcher. And somebody had a story about him. I was listening to a Phillies podcast yesterday, maybe the Ruben Amaro one. And they were saying David Wells went to spring training and he lost a bunch of weight. No, it was during the Phillies game last night. Kevin Stocker and Fransky were talking about that. David Wells went to spring training 1 year and he was like losing weight. He lost a lot of weight and then he wasn't pitching as good. So he put the weight back on and then he became his old self again. That's just an example. You got to know yourself. You got to know what works for you and build a ritual, self-ritual as an individual, I guess. I don't know if that's a perfect example of a Stephen King needs to smoke cigarettes constantly. I don't think he does it anymore. But that's a story I heard. probably on Joe Rogan podcast. Stephen King and smoking. Stephen King on smoking. Does that come up in anything? Because that is like the general. I was saying there's a stereotype about on poets. There's this like trope about poets. They're sad, helpless, so sensitive. That's why I don't like the term being a poet, because people get that perception. As a writer, yeah, you always see that depicted in movies and TV, that all these writers are smoking their pipes or smoking cigars or cigarettes. So that is kind of a trope. Or all these, the 27 Club, all these tortured musicians that can't even survive past the age of 27. They become drug addicts because they're so tortured. Stephen King is a former heavy cigarette smoker, recovering addict. I would consider myself the same way. Like, I don't get cravings for it though. I think they're kind of gross. If I smell it now, which I rarely do, but when I do smell cigarettes, it does gross me out. He often weaves themes of tobacco dependence into his books. I've never read one Stephen King book. I've watched a lot of his movies, but I just never got into his books. He used to smoke 2 packs a day. So, yeah, I can feel for that. I never got that bad, but it was definitely every break I took at work, I would need a cigarette it was the habit I got into back in, the early 2000s. After his family staged an intervention in the late 80s, Stephen King successfully quit smoking and all other substances. See, that's cool. Making Needful Things his first sober book. Alright, I'm going to have to read that one. Despite the well-known health hazards, Stephen King admitted that part of him still misses the soothing, rhythmic ritual of taking a cigarette break while writing. So yeah, just don't get into it. If you're a young writer, don't fall into that trap, because you'll get addicted eventually. And cigarettes are more of a slow type of poison, I guess. It'll affect everyone differently. But yeah, I don't get a craving for that anymore. I would say the one drug that was most satisfying was coffee for me. I'd rather drink a really heavy cup of coffee and just get that caffeine rush. But then you have the come down, and you have to drink more and more depending on what your routine is. So it's a dangerous addiction too. Not as much as a, heroin addiction. I don't think drinking coffee will cause major problems unless you're really overdoing it. If you're drinking 30 cups a day, then yeah, you're probably going to have some health issues, some kidney stones or some shit. But it's not like cigarettes. Cigarettes would probably, majority of people will get some kind of sickness if you do it for your entire life. But I'm not going to judge people, man. I just don't get down like that. I'm just speaking of my own opinion here. I'm not judging other people. I've talked about this a lot, because sometimes you could come off as that air of superiority, like, yeah, don't do drugs, kids. Like, sure, you don't want kids to get into that shit because their brains are developing or whatever the scientific data would support, if that's the truth. But every culture is going to handle these things differently. And I think it's worse when you try to demonize people, or you put people in jail for shit like that. I think it brings the wrong message. And it's usually based on racist stuff or other variables that aren't connected to the reality. Yeah, do you want to live in Kensington? I'll speak of Kensington because that's pretty well known, even if you're not from this area. I'm in southern Jersey. I worked in Philadelphia for over 10 years. And people always talk about Kensington. You could go on YouTube, check it out. Do you want your neighborhood to turn into that? No, you don't. There's just people shooting up fentanyl, whatever the hell that is, or anything else on the street. So I can see the law enforcement side of the issue too. Like, well, because you say that to a police officer, he's going to say, "Do you want your neighborhood to turn into Kensington or some other tent city with homeless people?" Of course not. I don't want to live around drug addicts and stuff. Like, they're not all bad people though. It could happen to anybody. It's not that hard to fall down that avenue of alcohol and drugs. And once you're in it, the worst thing you can do is demonize that person. Just because they're addicted to a drug doesn't mean they're a criminal. It could lead to that, and I get that effect. There is a cause and effect to that. You need money for drugs. How are you going to get money? You're going to steal. You're going to do violent shit. You're going to turn to prostitution. There's a lot of different cause and effect relationships. If you want to talk about gateway drugs, maybe there's a little bit of relevance to that, but there's also a lot of bullshit. I think that's the biggest problem in America, specifically American drug policy usually doesn't rely on 100% truthful statements. It's a lot of prejudice and a lot of false conceptions. Not as bad as reefer madness in the 20s or whatever, whatever the hell that was. But there is some misinformation on both sides. But I don't know. I just never got into it because I get paranoid. I'm just speaking of my own reaction. Being in a group setting, if I would smoke a joint, just take a hit, I would get paranoid as fuck. And back in the day, like in my 20s, and I would just have to leave and just be by myself somewhere. I was weird like that. Not always, but it developed into that. I would just get real paranoid about shit. I could do it by myself and be totally normal though. Like in college or other times, if I wanted to try to write music, I would try to do that, or just relax and watch a movie. I could see the positive aspect of something like that. You're going to see a concert. A lot of people do that just to relax their mind, be a part of the experience. I think the last time was probably over 15 years ago. I went to see Altan Gun, the Turkish psychedelic Anatolian rock band in Philadelphia, Kung Fu Necktie. And you could smell it in the air, not like I was smoking it, but you could get the secondhand smoke and feel high just from that, just from breathing in the smoke. And it felt good. I can see why people do that at a concert, especially like a psychedelic band like that. So you could fully just escape and go with the music and feel like it's a community of just people mellowing out. So I'm not against it. I would never make certain drugs illegal like it is now, or even though it's gotten better. If I was king of the world, I'd probably be different because I think people are inconsistent with their views. You could watch a sporting event, you'll see at least 10 beer commercials and liquor commercials. Not so much liquor, mostly beer. I don't even think you see many liquor commercials for like Absolute Vodka. Maybe those are kind of done with. I can't remember any. Like it seems like a lot of famous people make tequila now or other alcohol, but you don't see commercials for it too much. But you'll see Guinness and Coors Light, Budweiser. So there's an inconsistency. I'm not saying beer is a bad thing either. I said it yesterday that that's like a very American thing, a very even people with English ancestry in the UK, beer is like a big part of that culture. And in America, it became a part of the culture too, because I guess the water filtration wasn't that good. Or a lot of water wasn't safe to drink in the founding of the country times in the 1700s. So if you can make beer, it's not going to really get you drunk. It's got limited alcohol in it. Whatever process it is to make it a cleaner experience, yeah, beer is a good thing. And I think it's cool, all the little micro brews people could really create different experiences. But I haven't had a drink of alcohol in probably 10 years. It's not something I really miss. But I guess that's why the straight edge thing makes sense to me. Just it keeps me it keeps me physically healthy, to keeps me motivated to do what I want to do. It doesn't mean I'm going to get there though. Just because I'm clean living, I still have to find a path to get a story like this actually made. So I don't think I have to worry about sharing this story and people are like, oh, he's stereotyping this or that because of this and that. Like, I really don't think I have anything like that in this story. This would be a story I would write for children. Like, it's such a simple look at class warfare and what makes someone successful, what makes somebody powerful, who says, I don't know if I'm really saying the themes correctly here. It is a bit of class warfare involved in this and in this story, but it's more about if you're a leader, how do you lead your people? And that's why I wanted to read The Prophet again. I read it a couple years ago when I wrote this, and then it made me think of it yesterday when I brought this story back up again. So I read The Prophet this morning because it's only like 80 pages, and I highlighted some sentences that I thought were cool. Some of them just made sense to me in my own type of where my head is right now, where I feel like I'm blocked in life and I can't do anything. I can't live as an independent person. That's kind of where this book, um, this is only the second time I read it. The first time was just to get a sense of it. This time it kind of became a reflection of my own head because it is like a meditation. I mentioned Marcus Aurelius, his book of meditations that he wrote, kind of a famous Stoic type of philosophy. Marcus Aurelius, it was kind of just his random thoughts. There's not a lot of rhyme and reason to how it's ordered, but it's really good. That was the one I really enjoyed in college. I never read this until maybe 3 years ago. But the other thing I mentioned is Salma Hayek was involved in an animation with Liam Neeson, some other people, and they put this animation together not too long ago about the prophet. There's music with Richard Harris, maybe reciting this stuff. I still haven't checked it out. So it's a very popular book from whenever he wrote this. I was reading a little bit about the author. I don't think he'd like to be known as a philosopher. He was just known as a poet and visual artist, I think. I don't know anything else about that, so I won't speak too much about it. Just whatever you can look up on Wikipedia. But I think a portion of this was maybe, because I was curious, who is he basing this prophet on? Is it like a Islamic thing, a Persian thing? Is it, I think he was Lebanese. Is it that part of the world? And some of the people were saying it's really based on himself. It's just his own thoughts and his own meditations. But I don't know enough to really talk too much about that. But I'm pretty sure he was a Lebanese American. What could I really say about this? Well, he wrote The Prophet in 1923, so it's not that long ago, and it's been translated into more than 100 languages. And I think when he came to America, he was in Boston. I'm just going from Wikipedia. I don't want to talk too much about his life. I'm sure it's interesting. He also has a book called The Madman in 1911. I have to read that because that sounds really interesting. It's just more parables and poems. The Madman, his parables and poems. I think that's kind of the opposite of the prophet. So I have to check that out. Somebody mentioned that on Reddit when I was reading through Reddit. But yeah, future reading. But this is a very quick read. If you've never checked it out, it's poetry, but it's more like a preaching, like a sermon. Like if you're a Christian, you're probably used to the Jesus parables and the Good Samaritan and I don't know, the story of feeding the hungry masses, the bread and fishes and stuff like that. I guess the Good Samaritan is the most well-known parable because there's actually a law, like from the Seinfeld episode, the Good Samaritan law. What do you do if you see somebody getting mugged? Do you go and try to help that person? Or if somebody falls into the ocean, do you jump in and try to save them? Like, I guess these are very, there's extenuating circumstances or different variables because you can make it worse too. But I'm going back to ethics and stuff like that. But the Good Samaritan is a good base to, if you don't know what the prophet is, it's a lot of stories like that, I think. That's what I get from it. The first thing I highlighted, I'm not going to take too long on this. Just go read the book. Take from it what you take. Because I can only talk about my own reflections on what I get from these words. Like chapter 5 of the book is called Giving. And each chapter is just this prophet talking to people, giving them answers to questions. And this chapter, there was a rich man who said, speak to us about giving. So he talks for, I don't know, 2 pages about his thoughts on giving. And I highlighted one line, and what is fear of need but need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable. So I like that line. Another line I highlighted, well, it has one of those deep philosophical reckonings. Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable, like the fear of it. I could relate to that. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and the pain is their baptism. I like that line. So these could be like Bible verses. It sounds like it. When I was reading it, because I'm used to all the Jesus stories growing up, my introduction to ethics, morals, and were from Bible stories, really, as a 5-year-old kid up until high school. It all came from the Christian worldview. This chapter 7 is about work. You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. And I thought that was pretty good. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. That made me think of, the people who say, if you could make a living doing what you love, then you'll have no conflict. You'll wake up eager to meet the day. If you have no purpose, you should just stay in bed because there's nothing to nothing to motivate you. It's a problem in a lot of societies. If people can't find purpose, that's why people turn to drugs and other shit. Without a purpose, I remember priests talking about that in high school, a man without a purpose. It's a very common theme in a lot of Dead Poet Society. a lot of movies have that theme, seize the day. Um, the lack of purpose is the reason a lot of people turn to the dark side, because they don't see where their life could go. That's how I feel right now. I'm still doing this stuff because I don't want to lose the plot. By lose the plot, I mean, I tried to be a nurse. I thought about becoming a teacher to teach people English or learn Spanish so I could teach Spanish people English. I thought about doing that. But I'm not a nurse. I'm not a teacher. I'm a writer, an artist, and a musician in terms of how I view it. I can say those things because I feel pretty confident. If given the opportunity, I could do those things in a more complete fashion without being published, without having a song on the radio. You don't feel like you could survive, but you're going to do it anyway. Going back to the Gillian Welch song, you're going to do it anyway, even if it doesn't pay. Because what else? Like, and I'm fine with that. If the trade is in order to live the rest of my 20 years or longer, but I think I need 20 years to do my project. That would be 64, 65 when I finally get done with this stuff. And who knows where it's going to go. I didn't know I was going to write 20 more albums over the last year. So I don't know where it's going to go in the future. But I still consider myself, even if I had to supplement my life and not go 20 hours a day trying to record stuff and learn these things. If I can't do that, I can't do it. I have to get a job. I'm not complaining about that. I'm trying to get a job so I could start this process. So speaking of his thoughts on labor, that's why these lines made sense to me. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But I say, not in sleep, but in the over-wakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all blades of grass. Speaking of, like, everyone's job is important to some degree. Even the field goal kicker can win or lose you a Super Bowl. People don't consider a field goal kicker a football player because they don't get physical very often. They probably don't even look like football players, but kickers can win or lose you a Super Bowl. That's how important their job is. If you want to use that as an example, that's what I get from those words. All right, this is chapter 9, houses, and I highlighted one little short phrase. You shall not dwell in tombs made by the dead for the living. Kind of a way to say, yeah, your house should be full of life. Somebody else, when you get a book on Kindle, it's kind of cool. You could see what other people highlighted. Like the majority of people, I think that's what this means. Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul, and then walks grinning in the funeral. I don't even know what that means. Verily, the lust for comfort murders the passion of the soul. Your drive to get more comfortable will murder your passion. And then walks grinning to the funeral, in the funeral. Yeah, I don't know what that means. You're just waiting to die because that's the ultimate comfort is when you're out of your body finally. You don't have to have your stupid thoughts and frustrations anymore. You don't have to think about your second mortgage or whatever the fuck you're worried about, your student loans. The ultimate comfort is when you're out of your body, like going back to that, your body is a cage. And I think there's other passages that made me think of that. Chapter 12 is crime and punishment, like the Dostoevsky. And verily, he will find the roots of the good and the bad, the fruitful and the fruitless, all entwined together in the silent heart of the earth. He will find the roots of the good and the bad, the fruitful and the fruitless, all entwined together in the silent heart of the earth. Yeah, that can mean a lot of different things. And one more phrase, the last sentence in this chapter, and that the cornerstone of the temple is not higher than the lowest stone in its foundation. Going back to, yeah, that's kind of like classism, that you shouldn't judge a rich person, you shouldn't judge a poor person. You don't know that person based on their income status or their race or religion. That's my case against identity politics, why it fails to create a more equal environment. It might have that intent, but it forces people to identify themselves by narrow constructions, narrow formulated social engineering. That's just the way it is. You got to be real with it, man. Identity politics, it might have that intent to make everyone equal, but I think in the end, it makes people stupid, and it makes people vindictive and fake and very illogical. I think that's the problem. Yeah, you're so certain to define yourself under a certain way, but I just don't. I can't get down with that type of life like that for other reasons I talked about. Chapter 14 of the prophet is called Freedom. And you shall be free indeed when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want and a grief. But rather when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them naked and unbound. So I guess he's kind of giving up on trying to find enlightenment. Kind of what I talked about yesterday, like you can half-ass it. You can't find in a capitalist or communist or socialist. You still have to deal with society, and everyone can't just meditate all day. You got to have a functioning, you have to have a functioning working class and a functioning way to survive as a society, as a country. So you can't just meditate all day and live in that type of spirituality. There has to be some kind of balance, and I guess that's what I get from that line. So you shall be free when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want. But when these things girdle your life and you still rise above them, I kind of like that sentiment. Chapter 15 was reason and passion. Your soul is oftentimes a battlefield upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite. So I like that too. It's almost like your body and mind battling against each other. He's calling it your soul, where your reason and your judgment are waging war against your passion and your appetite. So right now, what is my reason telling me? Don't move west until you get a job. If you go out there not knowing anybody, you're probably going to die starving to death somewhere, because that's what happens to a lot of people. And my passion is saying, dude, what the fuck? You're 44. Get on a bus right now. Do your thing. Find a job. Buy your piece of land. And do exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. That's the passion. But the reason is more like a fearful thing. The reason side of your brain is like risk assessment. What are the chances that you'll actually be able to survive like that? And going through what I went through for just 2 days and nights out in the street, I know I couldn't survive like that. At least under certain circumstances. Chapter 17 is called Self-Knowledge. And for the soul, this is the ending of the chapter. For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals. I thought that was a cool line, the lotus. you're picturing your soul unfolding itself over the years. It's not walking upon a line or growing, it's unfolding itself. It's already there. Like it's a weird type of a thought experiment. You can't do anything to grow or evolve your soul. It just always is and always was. All you have to do is recognize it inside of you. It's not something that you could go to school how to better your soul. I guess that's kind of what people do through meditation and prayer. But it's about discovering the soul that's already there, not trying to grow something new. And also, they mentioned the Baha'i faith, Bahai, which is kind of a interesting religion that I heard about before. I think it started in Iran, but it's been persecuted even there because it's a minority religion. Baha apostrophe I, Baha'i. I don't know how to say it. But it was established fairly recently in the 19th century. It kind of promotes no nationalism, uniting all people through this world religion, which is, according to some biblical stuff, that's like the Antichrist, a one world religion or whatever. But there's a picture I found, I think on Wikipedia. One of the famous temples was an actual lotus. I think it's in Iran. And it was pretty interesting. That's what made me think of that line. Yeah, the Lotus Temple, the first Baha'i house of worship of India, built in 1986. And it looks like a lotus. It's really cool looking. It attracts like over 4.5 million visitors a year. So it's an interesting religion. It is kind of spread out throughout the world. Maybe it has, I don't know how many people. In 2020, there's about 8 million people in this faith, the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i faith is the only religion to have grown faster in every United Nations region over the past 100 years than the general population. Yeah, it's something I want to read more about because it is interesting to me. I don't know anything farther than the general theme of a religion like that. A world religion. This is according to David B. Barrett, a sociologist. A world religion with no racial or national focus. So that's definitely interesting. I talk about that all the time. That I don't want to be a part of a tribe because I don't like that nationalism, tribalism. You're feuding with people just because of where they're born. That's what it really is. It's stupid. It's illogical. I just thought I'd mention that. I think there is a connection with this author, Gibran, and that faith, but I could be wrong. I'm just whatever I read today. I'm trying to remember. Chapter 20 of the book is called Talking, and this was really good for me because I talk too much. You talk when you, excuse me, you talk when you cease to be at peace with your thoughts. And when you can no longer dwell in the solitude of your heart, you live in your lips, and sound is a diversion and a pastime. And in much of your talking, thinking is half murdered, for thought is a bird of space, that in a cage of words may indeed unfold its wings but cannot fly. Yeah, that's really good. I like this chapter the most, I think. And it's really short. Like you could get through this book in like a half an hour. You could keep it with you and just read it whenever you need a refresher on some of these topics that, very general topics. Kind of like the Buddhist book I read, Samsara, about how to deal with some of the inconsistencies in life and conflicts against your path of enlightenment. It's all connected. If this was a Buddhist book, I wouldn't think any different. This is a non-denominational book, I believe. I don't know what religion he was, but these are just universal principles. But I really like that line. You talk when you cease to be at peace with your thoughts. If you can't live alone and happily with your own thoughts, yeah, that's definitely me. You are good. All right, this is about good and evil, chapter 22. You are good when you are fully awake in your speech, yet you are not evil when you sleep while your tongue staggers without purpose, and even stumbling speech may strengthen a weak tongue. I thought that was pretty good. You are good when you are fully awake in your speech, like a form of enlightenment. I guess that's the power of, I'm thinking of motivational speakers. That's why they're so effective, because they feel like they have the answers, whether they're snake oil salesmen through their words or they really do have some guiding principle to share with people. This is chapter 23 called Prayer. When you pray, you rise to meet in the air those who are praying at that very hour, and whom save in prayer you may not meet. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. So all these things that people develop in their heads before they pray, so they can pray in a genuine fashion. He goes through a list. I don't want to read the whole thing. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. Like, I kind of think of ego death. Like, don't bring yourself into prayer. Don't bring your wants and desires. It's an ego death thing. That's why the people will travel to Peru to do ayahuasca or find a different ceremony like that. Because you're trying to kill your desires, your wants, and all that shit. I can relate it to my own struggle right now, but it's not like I'm addicted to something. I just want to do something. I want to have a purpose in life. Like, that's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to hurt other people in this conquest. It's a, if you don't have a purpose in life, then yeah, you should just stay in bed all day. Like, and I don't know, your purpose can be anything. It doesn't have to be job related. There's plenty of people throughout time without this version of how humans live is not that, it's not how it's always been, that you go to school, go to college, get a job, have a career, be happy with your 2 kids in a suburban house and whatever else. Like, that's how we view society, like that, because that's the only way we can survive. But I'm not trying to say, like, you can find purpose in a lot of different ways. Even if I had a job right now as a barista and I was giving blood, I would still do that every 2 weeks, give blood, donate platelets. If you think about it, that's more meaningful. I'm serving people coffee, and that's a good service. People need coffee throughout the day, and that's a fine thing to do. But giving blood is more needed. So even though that's not a job, that's more meaningful than selling life insurance, or it can be. I go back to life insurance because I did do that for a year. Nothing against it. But what's more needed, somebody to sell life insurance or people to give blood to sick people? Just in terms of humanitarian aspect, yeah, you still need to be able to survive and eat. If I don't eat, I can't be healthy, and I can't give healthy blood to people. So it's all relatable, but just as an action, what's more meaningful in terms of serving your community or serving another individual who needs some help? You can do that in other ways. It doesn't have to be donating blood. You could just work at a volunteer at a soup kitchen or other Red Cross stuff that I was trying to get into earlier this year. All right, this chapter 25, is called Beauty. Beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity and you are the mirror. Again, I'm just going through the things I highlighted. Chapter 26, and it's almost the end of the book already. Religion. Each one of these chapters is only like 2 or 3 pages. This was my favorite line of the entire book. I highlighted it in green so to remember this. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. That's everything I've been saying about art. I want to create art, not to meet a demographic that could get me on the radio, not to be involved in some political bullshit, not to be a diss track, not to do this and that. I just want to make cool music that's not dependent on other people's attitudes and worldviews. That's all a part of it because it's in my head as well. I've lived long enough to see how people live and get a sense of other people's opinions about stuff. But I don't want to be bound by another person's attitude of how I write my music. I'm not going to care about the critics or a record label or some agent or some editor. They could give me advice or opinions, and I'm happy to do that. But if you're creating art for those reasons that you feel like you're boxed in, like you're singing through bars and wires, that's what I got from that line. It's not the freest song that you can make. When I think of a free song or a free piece of art, it's about honesty. It's about not only thinking outside the box, but creating something new. If you can do that, it's probably impossible at this point. Try to write a love song, it's been done a million times. Try to write a song about peace and love and anti-war. Most of it's been done. You're just going to be repeating somebody else. Make a song about class warfare or even digital technology, which I wrote a lot of songs about. It's been done already. The Simpsons did it. So, in terms of what's the freest song that you can develop from your soul to share with the world with no restrictions of language and political correctness? That's what I get from that line. That's why I like it, because that would be like the motto of my company, my publishing company, my record label, Compass Charlatan Publishing. I would put that on my shipping container home. I'd paint that. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. Like, that's perfect. I couldn't say that better. You want to have free, honest art that's not going to be something that disappears in a week or two, like another one-hit wonder, or maybe that's not the best way to look at it, because there's some one-hit wonders that are still like being played today. But you don't want to be just another carbon copy of another artist just because it's selling at that point. Oh, this is hot right now. Everyone trying to make this type of music. That's not freedom to me. Freedom to me is sitting in my shipping container trying to write this album. And this is an album I could do myself once I get to the music and the words, the songs. There's only 6 songs. I could do this one myself because it's going to be one of those heavy shoegaze albums with spoken word. This would be one I could do myself. So I would be sitting there, and I have the general blueprint for how the songs go, but in that moment when I lose myself in trying to create it, I don't know what's going to happen, but I need that ability to do that. This is another quote from this chapter about, about religion. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with you your all. Take the slow and the forge, the slough, SLOUGH. Take the slough and the forge and the mallet and the lute, the things you have fashioned in necessity or for delight. For in reverie you cannot rise above your achievements nor fall lower than your failures. I just thought it was really good poetry there. And if this is the ending of that chapter, and if you would know God, be not therefore a solver of riddles, rather look about you, and you shall see him playing with your children, and looking to space, and you shall see him walking in the cloud, outstretching his arms in the lightning, and descending in rain. You shall see him smiling in flowers, then rising and waving his hands in trees. God and nature, like that's in a lot of different traditions. I also read a book about Japanese customs, and that was a part of it, respect for nature. This is more of, I looked up Gnosticism when I read this line, because that's what I kind of pictured with that. The material realm is kind of looked at as a more evil aspect, material realm, but that's always a battle. Even today with artificial intelligence, you can go down that avenue of thought and argument. Do you want to demolish and deforest these regions of beautiful country to build data centers and shit? Am I a part of that for using digital technology? Am I a part of the problem? Yeah, you could go deeper and deeper into that type of a guilt trip if there is one. Would I be a happier person without a smartphone? I would have to give it up and see, really, as an experiment, how would I spend my day more in nature without any of this? But this is what I want to do, so I look at it as a necessity. Yeah, I use my phone to watch sports highlights and other nonsense, but those are just moments of escape that everyone kind of needs in one way or the other. I don't see that as a problem. Chapter 27 is about death. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. Let me read that again. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. Yeah, it's one of those mysterious kind of lines that I can't really explain. In all your hopes and desires, that's where your knowledge of the beyond is. That it kind of hides there. Creeping death. Chapter 28 is the farewell. We wanderers, ever seeking the lonelier way. So this is why it reminded me of Buddhism. Like, didn't the Buddha just kind of separate himself from society and just meditate and find enlightenment by himself like that? I'm thinking of the show Kung Fu. I'm thinking of Poker Face. Natasha Lyonne, she's kind of a wanderer. Or in Kung Fu, he's wandering the Wild West. We wanderers, ever seeking the lonelier way, begin no day where we have ended another day, and no sunrise finds us where sunset left us. Even while the earth sleeps, we travel. We are the seeds of the tenacious plant, and it is in our ripeness and our fullness of heart that we are given to the wind and are scattered. Like, if there ever was a case for the beautiful life of like gypsy living, nomadic life, and maybe it was easier back then, but I don't know, maybe it was harder. You could do it today easier, I don't know. I was listening to a podcast with Linda Segarra talking about when she was train hopping from New York to New Orleans. She would just hop on freight trains and take trains all over the country. Living that life like that, the wandering life, there's a beauty in that. This is from the same chapter. And some of you have called me aloof and drunk with my own aloneness, and you have said, he holds counsel with the trees of the forest, but not with men. He sits alone on hilltops and looks down upon our city. True it is that I've climbed the hills and walked in remote places. How could I have seen you save from a great height or a great distance? How can one be indeed near unless he be far? Yeah, that's one of those Jedi mind tricks. I don't know what he's trying to say there. I just thought it sounded really poetic. You are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to houses or fields. That which is you dwells above the mountains and roves with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth or digs holes into darkness for safety, but a thing free, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the ether. This is one of the longer chapters, the last chapter. I was just highlighting stuff throughout it. Yet you shall not deplore having known blindness, nor regret having been deaf. For in that day you shall know the hidden purposes in all things, and you shall bless darkness as you would bless light. A little while, and my longings shall gather dust and foam for another body. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, I kind of get the reincarnation angle. It's weird that I was just talking about that yesterday. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There was one other one I forgot, because that reminded me of his quotes about children. Chapter 4 is about children. And that kind of reminded me of that, because if you want to believe in those past lives, that we're all inside of me, according to some spiritual new age type of a response to a question like that, inside of me are all these dueling souls. I talked about Mira Kelly in her book, Past Life Regressions, which is really good. And she talks about that there's like an oversoul within you. There's different souls battling for control of your consciousness. That's how I kind of view it. I'm not speaking for her, but I kind of view it like that. The brand new album, The Devil and God Are Raging Inside of Me, like that type of duality, but it could be more than that. There's different levels of it. So chapter 4 is just titled simply Children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That plays into that, because everyone, the parents and the children, they all have their own past lives that maybe they haven't pinned down yet and fully understood. And if that's related to the samsara thing and finding peace in the Buddhist mind, it's all kind of related like that. All right, I'm going to take a short break and then come back and go through the album, read all the songs, and see how good I could do with that. I did look through it quickly, but some of them are spoken words, so it shouldn't really take that long. But I thought it was good to go through some of these lines from the Prophet, because it is kind of interesting. It's not light reading, but it's not heavy reading. It's not exactly like reading a religious text, but it's similar to that. And yeah, I think there's a reason it was such a successful book over the years. All right, I'm going to continue now. While I was reading this morning, I read, like I said, The Prophet, Khalil Gibran. I was listening to 2 really good ambient albums, so I figured I'd mention those. The first one was Volodya Brodsky, Volodja Brodsky, Whispering Lane, from, I'm looking at my Bandcamp. I bought this in 2024. I think I'm saying his name correctly. Valaja. I think it's a man. I really don't know if that's a woman's name or a man's name, so apologies. Valaja Brodsky, Whispering Lane. And the other one was a Scottish musician from, speaking of Scotland again, from a band called Coil, Drew McDowell. It was an album of ambient music that's really, really good from 2024. So both of these were from 2024. Usually I'll wait till the end of the year, make a list of my favorite albums, and then maybe the top 10 or 20, I'll try to buy them on Bandcamp. That's why I was going down these rabbit holes, I guess. I bought these around that same period in 2024. I just want to give credit to that because it did make the reading easier when you have some kind of an ambient noise. And I like the ambient with no drums, the droney textures that kind of just exist without any structure to it. That's what I love about ambient music. Brian Eno has plenty of that stuff. All right, we're going to get into the story now of the Vulture Prince and go through how I came up with this stuff and some of the inspirations that I talked about in my book. I mentioned the band Shakti. There's an album by Shakti and John McLaughlin, the famous guitar player. Maybe he's Scottish too, I don't know. Natural Elements was from, I guess, the 70s. Shakti, kind of like an Indian type of musician, and John McLaughlin. I don't know if that's the band name or the actual guy. Shakti, Shakti. That's kind of the mood I was going for when I started writing some of these songs. I have another album that I was trying to make my guitar sound like a sitar, trying to form weird raga stuff because I do really think that's interesting. And Indian music's been kind of a part of my life, not as much as it was in the past, but I go off and on with different types of music. And yeah, of course, I learned my first introduction to Indian music was those Beatles songs like Within You, Without You, and whatever that other one is. I'm not going to read from my preface, but I talk a little bit about cultural appropriation in some of these in this chapter because it's kind of what I began this with. I don't want to be offending other cultures when I try to write a story like this. It does involve a genie and some other stuff. And I never even thought twice that it would maybe be culturally appropriating. Of course, I'm saying it's from the Middle Eastern tradition of that type of a morality tale, or from Persian stuff or other traditions that have stories like that. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm not going to read this story because I actually want people to buy my book. So I don't want to read everything. I talk about censorship. I mentioned the one, Aladdin is considered offensive in some Arab cultures. That the story Aladdin could be culturally insensitive, at least. Maybe it's not meant to be, but maybe it stereotypes certain people. One of my favorite albums is from, what is it again? Yeah, Susie and the Banshees from the Juju album, Juju, 1981, the year of my birth. She had a song called Arabian Nights, and I guess it kind of racially profiles Middle Eastern culture. She's talking about women's rights and maybe some darker things that I never knew what the song was about until later. And I always have this inner dialogue, like when it comes to that, like by listening to this song and buying this album, am I supporting some kind of a racist thing? But the more I read about Susie Sue, whatever her real name is, I kind of said, I think I came to peace with it. There was another example of a song, Hong Kong Garden, that supposedly she was writing from the perspective as of like a neo-Nazi person. You could read about it if you want. And the quote that I found kind of made me feel better. This is from Susie Sue, I believe. I remember wishing that I could be like Emma Peel from the Avengers and kick all the skinheads' heads in because they used to mercilessly torment these people for being foreigners. It made me feel so helpless, hopeless, and ill. So, yeah, I kind of go into some other songs too, but again, I want people to buy my book. Buy my book. So I don't want to give everything away what I was talking about. It's only like $4.99, man. So go for it. You want to learn about some of these issues that I try to discuss in my book. Arabian Nights, there is a controversy with that one. Because I'm talking about Middle Eastern stuff, I might as well try to look at it. I don't want to repeat the lyrics because there's probably some sensitive shit there. Well, it's weird. Disney's Aladdin and Arabian Nights is the first thing that came up. The most prominent modern controversy centers on the opening song. Oh no, I'm sorry. They're talking about Arabian Nights. It's an actual song from Aladdin. But I guess there's controversy with that too. Yeah, all right. This is 1981. They also talk about Aladdin, though. It's kind of weird that I didn't connect these dots until right now. The 1981 song by the English post-punk band also faced heavy scrutiny for different thematic reasons. While the song was seemingly written as a critique of Middle Eastern patriarchy and the abuse of women following the Iranian Revolution, critics argue that lead singer Susie Shu relied on extreme Orientalist cliches and harmful stereotypes. Again, this is coming from Reddit, other people's opinions. I'm not stating this like I agree with it or disagree with it. When I first heard this album and I heard that song, I had no idea it was about anything like that. Listeners and critics point out that the lyrics utilize some derogatory characterizations. The song describes women being kept as your baby machines. Like, that could be just patriarchy in general. Maybe she was pointing more towards things that were happening in Middle Eastern countries. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I did look it up back then because I wanted to include it in my book. I included that album on my favorite albums in my songwriting career because I love that album. But would it make it, if she was openly racist against like a different culture, would I take it off? I guess I would have to. Yeah, I'm looking at the lyrics now. I don't know if I want to go through it, but it's about the treatment of women. So I could see why she wasn't exactly a punk rocker. I would say she's more gothic, but maybe she was a provocateur a bit. And yeah, I'll just leave it. You can make your own opinion if you want to go deeper into that. I figured I should mention it since it is in my book. All right, I'm going to go through the story first, like I did before. There's only 6 songs, and this story is very short, which is why it's perfect for a children's book. I just need to be able to illustrate it in my own weird doodle type of fashion. I'm planning to make another doodle book. My rapid fire doodles that I called them, where I take 5 minutes to make a doodle. I make 100 of them, and then I spent a couple hours yesterday putting these doodles together into like 3 triplets or whatever they're called, when you put three separate pieces of art together like that. That's the cool part of digital art, that you could find different ways to be creative even when you don't want to be creative. So I might make a book of that if I could form some kind of a poem to go along with it. All right, let's get into the story of the Vulture Prince. I'm going to say transport yourself back to some Middle Eastern kingdom. I don't know, whatever empire this is. I don't know enough about that shit. But just like I said for the songs from the Rhine, transport yourself back to medieval times, either along the Rhine River, Germany, France, around that area of the world. So this is more the Middle Eastern area, and it's some desert somewhere. Could be Africa too. There's plenty of desert land there. It could be America. There's plenty of desert in America, but because there's a genie, I felt like I had to make it a Middle Eastern thing. The young, soon-to-be Vulture Prince enjoys a luxurious life of unquestioned power, with more gold and jewels to fill up 1,000 tombs, achieved by the brutal enslavement of his people. One morning, while strolling through his palace, he beats an old blind manservant for inadvertently sweeping sand onto his feet. The emaciated man takes the thrashing smiling, confusing the prince and leaving him with the feeling of impending doom. When the prince sleeps that night, he dreams of giant bats and vicious blood-sucking demons who mercilessly attack his kingdom. So yeah, I did say it was going to be a kid's book, but I still have to put my dark spin on things. And if you teach your kids about Satan and hell, I don't think you would mind a story with demons. I just like the feel of it. I made them more like bat creatures in my head, I think. There's only 6 of these paragraphs because the first song, this would be the animation or the pictures I make, just like I did with Songs from the Rhine and Waitress from Mars, kind of. More Songs from the Rhine. Each scene is going to be, accompanying when the song plays. This will be what is going to be on the screen. So the second one, the prince wakes later that night in a panic as the hideous creatures from his nightmare escape from his consciousness and destroy everything in their path. He then flees to safety in the desert, disguised as a peasant, leaving his people to be massacred by the demonic invasion birthed from his disturbed mind. I don't know if that was in my head at the time, but your thoughts can lead to reality. Maybe that's the metaphor I could get away with there. He's dreaming of these demonic-like bat creatures destroying his kingdom in his dream. But when he wakes up, these things come from his consciousness and actually do what he dreamt, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. A few days later, the now starving prince is greeted by a genie who appears from the desert sand and grants him only one wish. The prince immediately demands to be transformed into a vulture so he can eat an animal carcass nearby. The genie grants his wish, and the prince now enters the kingdom of the vultures, where a vicious vulture tyrant controls the scavenger bird society with an iron claw. The vulture prince soon realizes he must fight to survive, as the other more experienced scavengers take no pity on his plight and provide him no welcome. The vulture prince struggles to adjust within the scavenger bird kingdom, aided only by a few friendly buzzards who share their meager crumbs of food with him and provide him some protection from the more violent gangs of birds. One night, his new friends bring him to a remote shack where other merry scavengers dance and sing together, despite their impoverishment. The Vulture Prince discovers that these acts of joyful fellowship have been outlawed and shamefully recalls how he enacted similar harsh dictates during his own reign, back when he was a human prince. A few of the younger birds plan to start a revolution to end the divisiveness and cruelty their ancestors have faced for many generations, and the Vulture Prince agrees to help plan the offensive. Later that night, the Vulture Tyrant sends his armed guards to end the illegal gathering, as many of the revolutionary birds are slayed in the skirmish. Again, I'm reading a very short summary. The story would flow like this. This asshole, cruel prince becomes a bird because he wants to peck at this carcass in the desert when he's starving to death. That was his one wish from the genie. And now he's in this bird society with a cruel tyrant as Vulture, and he realizes he was doing the same thing to his own people. So after this happens, he's arrested, and he's put on trial for protesting the murder of his new scavenger friends. The hearing is just for show, and he's quickly sentenced to death, to be made an example for those who dare question the Vulture Tyrant's authority in the future. The next morning, he's tied to a wooden post in the town square, beaten badly, and left alone with his open wounds, while many scavengers gather around him, ready to feast on his carcass. Terrified, he shuts his eyes in despair and prays for mercy from any god willing to provide some, just as a massive sandstorm forms and carries him away from his captivity. He soars aimlessly through the desert, while memories of his past flash before his eyes, forcing him to relive his former life of selfishness, cruelty, and greed. The sandstorm eventually deposits the Vulture Prince in a desolate stretch of desert, where the sun scorches down onto his wounded flesh as he stares above, hoping for a quick death. The smiling, blind manservant, still bruised from the prince's beating, walks towards him with a caravan of former slaves, searching for a new home after barely surviving the kingdom's collapse. They ignore the suffering Vulture Prince as they pass, but the manservant bends down and gently wraps his wounds with a cloth, then pours some water into his beak before catching up with the others. The genie appears again from the sand and asks the Vulture Prince if he would like to make another wish. After pondering for a few moments, he begs to live a life like the smiling blind manservant who tended to his wounds and thirst. The genie grants his wish and transforms him back to human form as the prince smiles and thanks him, then quickly catches up with the caravan. As he paces through his former slaves, many recognize him and wish to enact their revenge, but the blind manservant puts his arm around him and protects him from any harm as they both trek happily through the ocean of sand towards nowhere. That's the end of this story. So it's a simple, very, very basic morality tale. Walk in my shoes, that's kind of what it is. The Vulture Prince is this cruel prince, and then because of his cruel thoughts and his actions, his kingdom gets destroyed by his own dream manifestations. He becomes a bird, a vulture, a scavenger, because he wants to peck at a carcass. He's starving to death in the desert. Then he enters the bird society. There's a lot of potential here. Could it be like an hour-long movie? Probably not. It would be too redundant. It could be a 20-minute to 30-minute animation and be interesting and not too preachy. If you make it an hour long, it's gonna get preachy. Like, rich people are bad, class warfare, everyone should be equal, communism, socialism, capitalism. People would start going down those political avenues. If you make it 20, 30 minutes, then it's just a simple kid's tale that just to show to be good to people. that's the main part of this story. This blind old servant of his um, saved his life and gave him water, even though he was beating him in the beginning. So it's a turn the other cheek type of story, which is always a good message. It doesn't always work out like that in life. Most of the time, you turn the other cheek and people will fuck you up. Sad to say, but that's how it is. It's a good way to try to behave, though. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe it doesn't have to be either or. Like, it's either eye for an eye or turn the other cheek. Maybe you can find a happy balance depending on the situation. But there's so many different situations that are too complicated for a cliche like that. So you have to find a different way. Like if somebody, what is our nuclear policy? It's eye for an eye. It's mutually assured destruction. If you fuck up me, I'm going to fuck you up. That's the military policy of any country with a nuclear weapon. Mutually assured destruction. It's a little bit more complicated than eye for an eye, but it's the same type of appeal. It's not going to be turn the other cheek. Somebody sends a nuke our way, we're not going to take it and be like, oh, we're going to turn the other cheek. Like, it's kind of hard to live like that in certain scenarios like that. I don't know how to really make peace with that type of a thing. That's why I wrote in this book as well that there is a type of bipolar sentiment to the Bible that is hard to get away from throughout your life. Eye for an eye versus turn the other cheek. The Old Testament versus New Testament. People say the Old Testament's more about the vengeful God and do no harm against God. He'll fuck you up, man. The New Testament, the Second Testament. The New Testament's more maybe about mercy and love. Jesus is kind of a hippie character at times, but he does have the one rage attack where he goes nuts in the temple. So even the Son of God could have a temper if he sees atrocities going on, I guess. So it's a very weird thing that I can't talk about more than my juvenile religious education. I'm not that intelligent to talk about that. That's why I don't want to sound preachy, because there's way more intelligent people that would be like, yeah, but you forgot about this and this. What about this? Just thinking about free will, I had that same type of hesitation. You bring up a concept like free will and predestination, predeterminism, and those things are just as complicated as where do your thoughts come from? And I can't go much farther than that. It gets too complicated, man. Are you really in control of your life? If so, how much control do you really have? Maybe you need to have kids before you really figure all this shit out. But that's why I want this story to be rather short, 15, 20 minutes. If it was turned into an animation, which I think it only works that way. I see it as a very, very minimalist type of animation. I mentioned that Salma Hayek movie. It's based on The Prophet, and it's pretty good. You could get it on Amazon, and it's pretty enjoyable. Salma Hayek, The Prophet. It's 2014 animation. Written and directed by Roger Allers, based on the 1923 philosophical book. Produced by Salma Hayek, the film weaves Gibran's famous poetic essays into a narrative about a captive artist inspiring a town to seek freedom. It's pretty good. It's got Liam Neeson and some other characters. Salma Hayek does one of the voices of the mother. Yeah, I like the animation for that too. I think it would be similar to that if I could get a similar type of a 15-minute story like this. 'Cause as a kid, this could be a story for little kids. It might have some fright if you have these demonic creatures. Maybe certain people wouldn't want to watch that or show it to their kids. I don't know. It's all depending on how grotesque you can make it. I was a pretty sensitive kid. I was freaked out at Disney World by like the witch in Snow White. That made me freak out. I was freaked out by like the gremlins in that movie. I was freaked out by claustrophobia. Like I remember we went to Disneyland as a kid. We went into this cave, one of those caves where you have to find a way out, and I started like freaking out, having like a panic attack. Um, so yeah, I was kind of a sensitive kid like that. Certain things would set me off. Um, but you kind of learn to deal with those type of fears later in life. Um, so I see this as an animation. The music, I don't think there's any cursing or anything. I think I made the decision not to put any bad words, at least to make it more pliable. Is that the right word? Make it more available to a younger audience. What does that word mean? Pliable. Isn't it like flexible? Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. I didn't want to put any curse words. I curse a lot. I realized that. I tried to do the Henry Rollins thing and stop cursing, but I just failed miserably. That's why that chapter in the book about talking hit me. When you're not at peace with your own thoughts is when you start talking your bullshit. When I start talking bullshit, but it's difficult because I'll go back to that same type of a statement that I made the last 2 days, that it's not my own bullshit causing me to go down these avenues. It's other people's bullshit. So what do you do in that scenario? You feel so helpless. I used to beat the shit out of myself to deal with stuff like that. I would hurt myself intentionally so I could own the pain of other people fucking with me. And that's stupid. It doesn't get you anywhere. But that's why people do stuff like that. They want to feel like they're in control. Going back to the free will thing. And I don't want to get dark like that. I'm trying to make this into a children's book. All right. I'm going to talk about these 6 songs now. This won't take too long because they're rather short. The first song is kind of heavy. It's called The Anomaly. And the first scene that I spoke about would be what this song kind of represents. It's a waltz. Again, my love of waltzes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I've seen the space inside my head. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sold out, saved face, enslaved for bread. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Deranged, demonic drilling. Compassion reigns rebellion. I've touched the fear behind their eyes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Ransacked starvation on the line. 1, 2, 3. Dun, 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 dun. Praise treason uninvited. Scapegoated disillusion. And in between these verses, you could do some music. You don't have to do it all in order. I'm just trying to get through this without losing my voice or anything. Sages recant with bloodied hands. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Predestined dust evolves collapse. Dun, 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 dun. Nature's disloyal conquest, redrawn as gods to float the haze. You could improvise some of that stuff. I'm not sure how to end that last I'd probably be screaming that last line or something. The outro is just very simple. Stomach stretched when you meet yourself again. Smiling anomalies. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It's a good way. I don't know. Maybe a waltz is a cool way to start an album like this. It's kind of a musical. I'm kind of singing this like a character. Like I'm taking the perspective of this evil prince who has a lifetime of cruelty against his people, and now the shit's gonna hit the fan for him, and he's kind of talking about himself. So this is kind of his inner consciousness, his inner angel or devil or both. I've seen the space inside my head, sold out, saved face, enslaved for bread, deranged, demonic drilling, compassion reigns rebellion. I want to say there's a bit of cheesiness to this because it is like a musical, and from my cynical brain, yeah, I get weirded out when I watch a musical. Like, why are they singing all these things? But that's what it really is. It's almost like his inner monologue. All right, the second song is called "Born in the Valley." Born in the Valley. It's not a waltz, it's just regular time signature. With every word I wrong, stolen angels cry, only a function of their fear. Every sparrow song soars the royal play, the snake weaved across the river queen, sorrow imitates. With every minor chord, trade the moon and sun, the veiled victory of valleys won. With every kingdom sought, begs the eager sword, tracing the fire from the root, mystical deluge. When I say this is going to be better when I do this, because I feel like I can do this song, I'm going to go the shoegaze route for this entire album. Very loud, distorted guitar. I don't know how much that will play into this story, but if you're showing this ancient Middle Eastern kingdom with shoegaze music that's not of that time period, I think it's a cool juxtaposition. Instead of just trying to write Middle Eastern music, you write some heavy shoegaze with crazy electric guitar, different layers like My Bloody Valentine. That's how I hear this. There'll be crazy fuzz as I'm singing these melodies. With every word I wrong, stolen angels cry, only a function of their fear. I need that blanket to disguise my flat tone. I need the blanket of crazy shoegaze noise to. That's why they call it shoegaze, because people can kind of hide their singing voice or lack of a singing voice. They can hide it behind the textures of guitar. Like, why do people love My Bloody Valentine, Loveless? Or I like their other one, their more recent one. I thought that was better. Maybe I'm playing. I don't want to be. Well, I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up with My Bloody Valentine, so I listened to Loveless when right before I listened to the newer one. What is it called, like MBV or something? The blue cover, and I thought that one was better. Maybe I have a different perspective because I didn't grow up with shoegaze. I grew up with Siamese Dream, but I never knew what shoegaze was until like maybe Joy Formidable and maybe that band Hum. Is that the name? Yeah. I heard she missed the train to Mars. She's out back counting stars. That band from the 90s. Yeah, I never got into the Deftones too much. People like them in my friend group in high school. A lot of people listen to Deftones. You can put somewhat in the Mars Volta I think they're crazy underrated. Mars Volta has crazy songs, man. There's two albums there. The first one and Bedlam and Goliath or something. That one was my favorite. And that's one of the newer ones, I think. Bedlam. I want to say it right. I don't know if that's correct. Yeah, the Bedlam and Goliath. It's an awesome cover too. It's the fourth album by the Mars Volta from 2008. And that album blew me away, dude. It has like a Middle Eastern album cover. Maybe that's why it's connected to this. But it's badass. It's really good album. Wow, it's another weird coincidence. Um, what am I reading here? The album debuted at number three on the Billboard 200. I totally was not aware of it until way after that. They did a cover of a Susie and the Banshee cover of a song, Pulled to the Bits by Susie and the Banshees. That's pretty cool. I was just talking about them. And they won a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance. So, yeah, I guess they do get their recognition. On a trip in Jerusalem, Rodriguez Lopez purchased an archaic Ouija type talking board as a gift. They would return to their tour with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And because of that Ouija board device, I guess that's how they started forming the songs. I'm taking this from Wikipedia. This is the first time I've learned of this stuff. That's pretty interesting. The Bedlam and Goliath. It's such a weird kind of album title. You're trying to do. The engineer who quit stated, I'm not going to help you make this record. You're trying to do something very bad. You're trying to make me crazy and you're trying to make people crazy. Well, that's a good thing to try to accomplish while making music. That's pretty interesting. The engineer quit while they were trying to produce this album. It sounds like a Stephen King story. A band goes to the Middle East, finds some weird um, mythological Ouija board. They go back to the United States, go on tour, and they start making their new album based on this weird device, giving whatever it was doing. I don't understand that part of it. And then all these cursed things starts happening. That's like a Stephen King movie or book. The song Soothsayer contains field recordings that Omar recorded in Jerusalem. The recordings are a mixture from the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Christian quarter. Lyrics from Conjugal Burns are found in the Delouse and the Comatorium short story. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right. I wanted to mention that with shoegaze, I can really go nuts with some of these and not feel so insecure about my singing. The third song is called Insight, and I think it's more of a spoken word thing, so that's how I'm going to do this one. Scavenger's disease, scavengers and heat, scavenge autonomy, your life, your path, your risked reward. The wilderness refrain of wilderness arcane, wildest victory, your plight, your voice, your karma amused. The desert without choice, deserts to anoint, deserted at birth. Your fight for your mind, your soul contrived. Playing mind games with bliss, dances with death. Insight imbibed, drunk off the vine. So if this would be a shoegaze song, it would be more of a meditative one with spoken word stuff, relatable to a lot of stuff I like. Speaking of dancing, Dances with Death, there is an old medieval illustrated book that I got off of Amazon years ago, and I think it's called Dances with Death. Let me rely on Wikipedia here, and hopefully it's not a bunch of bullshit. It's usually pretty reliable, right? Dances with Death. It's a medieval book, and it kind of depicts death in different representations. Dances with Death book. Let me see if I could find this. Yeah, late Middle Ages, the Danse Macabre, whatever it's called. Dance Macabre. I don't know how to say that word, sorry. Also called the Dance of Death. It's an artistic genre of allegory from the late Middle Ages on the universality of death. The dance macabre consists of the dead or a personification of death. Yeah, go look it up. The art is amazing. I had to buy it just to look at the sketchings. It's so good. This is not what it looks like. I don't know if I'm looking at the wrong thing. Nah, okay, that's the one, yeah. It looks like I mentioned that Johnny Depp movie, The Ninth Gate. That's what it looks like. In that movie, Johnny Depp is like a book historian. I don't know what his title was, but they hire him to go to, I don't know, someplace in Europe, or maybe it was I don't remember. He had to go look for this ancient book that somebody related to the Satanists wrote or something, and it has these weird, mysterious type of artwork, and that's what it looks like when you look at the pictures in this. It's really cool. I wanted to make again, this is an idea that would have to really get pitched to a production studio. You take every one of these pictures, I forget how many there are, maybe 30 or 40, and you know how like Ozark, which I love, that show, Ozark, they had those weird symbols. There was a bit of like satanic shit in that. I can't speak any farther, but it seemed like it was. The Dances with Death, if you take each one of these pictures and then you form a story from that, almost like a cop show, but you get real dark with it, like how Denzel movie Fallen dealt with demons. You could make a show like that, but each murder would be based on one of these sketchings from the medieval times. It was an idea I had, or something along those lines. Almost like how the movie Seven did it, the Seven Deadly Sins. Each murder was like an example of lust, greed, sloth, envy, vengeance. What's in the box? What's in the box? So these are areas where I get a lot of inspiration because it's heavy metal. Heavy metal is like based on all that shit. All right, the next song is just called The Vulture Prince, and I'm just going to read the lyrics again like the last one. Moonlight seeding, stoked ambition, face to faceless lore, a cannibal to court, madness on 2 feet, deeper destiny, chanting in defense, a schism fed on less. The refugee refunded in boiled visions, arresting avenues, more tendons to construe. So it might not sound as enjoyable, just me saying these words like this, but if you can picture very loud shoegaze, distorted guitar, that's what I'm going to do for each one of these songs. Wind Inviting is the next song. There's 2 more songs. Wind Inviting is song number 5. Masochistic, severed states, head on the swivel when pressing fates, accelerating providence. Echoes lure the burial, then capture the uncertainty, of saccharine arrogance. Wilderness a home, wilderness a home. There is a melody for the chorus that's like, wilderness a home, wilderness a home, dun 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 dun. Wilderness a home, wilderness a home. It's kind of a laid back, mellow type of melody, but you could get heavy with the music at least. Revelations make shift with a manicured revenge for the wind inviting. I guess I wrote these lyrics based on the story when he's being tied to a post and they were going to kill him, and then the big sandstorm came and sent him away. You can't really tell the story from these lyrics at all. I was trying to write lyrics to fit the theme of it at least. It's not going to tell the story without the animation though. Or if I made this into a kid's book, and then maybe that could become an animation later. The final song is called We Are Death. Depression addicts, stringed infinite, the narrow compass of pain exploited, bird's eye view, the bone surrogate, sequenced dregs of metamorphosis, the ending new, bled hourglass, to raise castles in the sand. We are death, whispered tonics. We are death, cold vibrations. We are death, stitched connections. We are death, conned in confidence. We are death, temples swarming. We are death, relics touring. We are death, thoughts exiled. We are death, lights exposed. Some of these themes might have came from the prophet. I'm sure when I went through that the first time, I was a little bit slower reading it and trying to really get the flow of the type of philosophy I was reading. And if that author is not considering himself a philosopher, I think that's what I read. Khalil Gibran, he didn't consider himself a philosopher, but that book is philosophy. What else is it? It's morality, it's ethics, it's existential stuff. How do you become a better manifestation of body and mind? And whatever the hell you want to talk about there. But I think that's what I read. For some reason, he didn't like that. Khalil Gibran. Lebanese American writer and poet. This is on Google from Wikipedia. He was also considered a philosopher, although he himself rejected the title for whatever reason. He didn't like that. Khalil Gibran was raised in the Maronite Catholic tradition of Lebanon. I don't know what Maronite means. I guess that's just the type of sect. I don't know. But his personal faith evolved into a universal, inclusive spirituality. He blended Christian mysticism, Sufism, Islamic mysticism, and even the Baha'i faith, which I talked about earlier, into a broad philosophical worldview. I could see why people go through this later in life, where you're still searching for something, and if you're as cynical as I am, you're like, you're not going to find it anyway. But where does that lead you at that point? When you get to that point of your life where you're like, you're losing faith in your religion, losing faith in your government, losing faith in the news, losing faith in just about everything. Where do you go at that point? Does it free you to just be a wanderer, wander the fucking world as a nomad, as a seeker, whatever they call it? Or does it make you feel angry and violent? Because people can react to that differently. Do you just become a stoic, a nihilist, an anarchist? I don't know, man. The worst character I ever wrote was probably in my first the first episode of the Madman's Daily Unequivocal Comedy. It was the character that I thought Jason Kelsey could play. What was his name? Foley. He was based on the character from Raising Arizona. You know, that guy on the motorcycle. Tex Cobb, yeah. And he's kind of my vision of somebody who loses their faith. And they're like, all right, what's the point of being good anymore? This is all bullshit. I'm just going to go kill and rape people. I'm going to go steal whatever I want, kill innocent people, kill whoever I want. Because that's how religious people like to view it. If you don't have that type of faith, you must be a criminal. You must be a heathen. How can you survive without our religion? We have the superior morality than anybody else. Not everyone, but some people think like that. On the reverse side, people on the other side could be snobby as well. Some of the atheist people, writers and debaters get kind of snobby at times. And it's not attractive from either, whatever your worldview is. Maybe I should look into the Baha'i faith. I don't even know how to say it, so apologies. Maybe I should look into that, because it did make me interested before. That Religion for Breakfast, that YouTube channel, I think they have a video about it, the Baha'i. I want to see how to pronounce it so I don't sound so stupid.
Baha'i.
Baha'i. All right, Baha'i. I was saying Baha'i. Baha'i. Is Baha'i a form of Christianity? It's not a type of Christianity. It teaches that all religions come from the same source and that all people are equal. See, I agree with all that stuff. I always like the term of humanism. That's kind of the same exact thing as a secular humanist, or, I don't want to speak for people who are that, because then they'll be like, no, it's not. There's so many differences that you don't know about. Baha'i. There actually might be a different way to say that too. Baha'i. I think some people say Baha'i, so I'm saying it Baha'i because I'm a lazy American. Baha'i. Yeah, it's interesting. If I searched that, what would come up? Baha'i compared to secular humanism. Let's see if anyone has anything on that. Because I don't even know what a secular humanist is, really. It's a fancy term for just what? Agnostic. You're kind of agnostic. You don't really put a lot of weight on any organized religion. Baha'i faith and secular humanism, they both advocate for universal human rights, gender equality, abolition of prejudice, and the promotion of global peace. However, they differ in their foundational sources. Of course, yeah. The Baha'i faith is a global religion. It's rooted in divine revelation. So there is a God. There is a type of a God spirituality. Secular humanism has no God. There's no divinity. It's just philosophy based on human reason and science. So yeah, there's a big difference there. But isn't every religion say that? Every religion says the same thing. They're for universal human rights, gender equality, peace and love, the abolition of prejudice. Every religion says that. That's why I get cynical, because why is there constant warfare and shit? Because nobody lives up to it. It's too difficult. Everyone just wants to kill each other. Again, I'm being overly cynical, but enough people want to kill each other that there's still a crazy amount of conflict around the world. But it's something to look at if you want to get deeper into this. The Baha'i faith is monotheistic. So it's kind of similar to that. See, I don't care about all that stuff. I care more about the if you're supporting a any type of organized religion or any political party, where is your allegiance taking you? And that's what I get afraid of sometimes. It's not transparent, so I don't really know what I'm getting into. The Baha'i faith teaches that the physical life is just the preparation for eternal spiritual realm. Again, I've heard that in a lot of Gnostic stuff. Excuse me, a lot of Gnostic type of teachings and even the Cathars. The purpose of human existence is to know and worship God, acquire virtues, and contribute to an ever-advancing civilization. Secular humanism is really the belief that this physical life is the only one humans have. The purpose of life is self-actualization, contributing to the greater good, like utilitarianism, and leaving a positive legacy for future generations. So I can get down with both of those things. I keep saying it's the younger generation it's their burden every fucking time. The younger generation, when they take over, what are they going to be left with? And not even talking about in the near future, in like 500 years from now, how's it going to look by that point? And it's interesting to think about things like that. But again, I guess these talks have really showed me that I really do enjoy animation, even though I don't really watch it. Over the last year, I can't really think of anything besides Rick and Morty. There's probably plenty of new animations in that vein, Adult Swim, or even more child-friendly stuff. I still enjoy kid-friendly cartoons. I listed my favorite cartoons in my book, and it's very similar to most people. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, I saw the trailer for the Masters of the Universe. It's probably going to be stupid. Maybe better than the one they made in the 80s with Dolph Lundgren. I have the power. But yeah, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, your main escape was not YouTube. It was Saturday morning cartoons as a kid. It was American Gladiators. Gladiators ready? Or WWF, which is still a thing. That's amazing to me that professional wrestling gets bigger and bigger as like $1 billion industry. I'm not saying it's fake. Those people have crazy skill as athletes, and hopefully they're not too steroided up. There's a lot of steroids in that industry. As a kid, I saw ECW, Sabu, that era of ECW at some South Jersey barn or something. Everyone's yelling, "Show your tits, show your tits." It was pretty crazy as a, whatever I was, 15 or 16. So yeah, you see a guy climb up a ladder and jump off a fucking ladder and land on someone. If you're saying, "Oh, it's totally fake, man," dude, the dude is bleeding out of his head. This guy has barbed wire and he's hitting this guy. Like, there's a part of professional wrestling that's definitely not fake. These dudes do get hurt. They get ACLs just like football players, torn ligaments, broken bones. The craziest story was the Hulk Hogan story. I heard his interview on Joe Rogan. Rest in peace, Hulkster. He had a initiation. He wanted to become a wrestler, and these old veterans broke his leg as like an initiation. They broke his fucking leg. It's a crazy fucking story, man. I don't know if that was the 70s. He's talking about going to these other countries and kind of the mob warfare that they had to deal with. There's some crazy stories in the world of wrestling. How can I relate that to this? I don't know. But I was a fan of that too. There was a couple of times where I would go to a friend's house and get a bunch of people to watch SummerSlam. I never got into it too much, but I was like every other kid from the '90s, playing with fucking He-Man figures and WWF wrestlers. Snap into a Slim Jim. Hulk Hogan broken leg story. I want to make sure I'm not making that up. Because when I do this unscripted, I don't care if I sound stupid, but if I say something factually wrong, I want to, yeah, the story, I want to make sure I'm not saying something completely factually stupid. But that's a story that I was amazed by, so it always stayed with me. Hulk Hogan broke his leg. It was a part of a legendary initiation from his early wrestling days in 1977 during his first training session with legendary wrestler Hiro Matsuda in Florida. Matsuda put him in a submission hold and broke his leg. Was it purposeful? I don't know. But that's pretty crazy, man. Like, you can't say it's completely fake. I understand that the stories, it's like acting. That's why it got corny to me. Like, I stopped watching wrestling after Stone Cold and The Rock were the biggest things. WW, Monday Night Raw, probably high school, mid '90s or later '90s. And then I kind of just never went back to it again. But I could see if you have kids, that's probably a cool bonding thing, that just like anything else. That's always kind of been a big part of American entertainment, uniquely American. I don't think it really exists anywhere else. Maybe Mexico, um, Nacho Libre. I don't know, but I want to say it's kind of uniquely an American form of entertainment. Like ECW was pretty badass. I don't know if it exists anymore. Billy Corgan has his own wrestling league. I don't know what it's called. But I guess what I could add to this conversation is, yeah, I'll look this up real quick. Billy Corgan is the owner, president, and promoter of National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA, which he got back in 2017. I never heard of it. I have to check it out. I just don't get into it. Like, there's so many things I keep saying. I never got into anime, or I never got into comic books or graphic novels. So yeah, there's certain things you just can't devote your time to. Billy Corgan's NWA just got insane. Yeah, I just can't get into it. It's not because I'm uncomfortable watching half naked men wrestle each other. It's not a homoerotic thing. Like somebody said about the movie 300, that, oh, it's a homoerotic fantasy. Maybe it is for some people. The movie 300, Sparta. I'm going to do something another day because I'm speaking of Hulk Hogan. I don't want to do it now. But if I had the ability to write screenplays right now, there's probably 3 or 4 that I have ready to go. One of them is about Hulk Hogan. It's about an allegory of cults, of religion. In my story I was going to write, it was kind of a dark comedy, I was going to say introspection, I guess, in a way it is, from the character. But there's a cult that forms in this reality, and it's based on Hulk Hogan and wrestling. And this cult becomes like a global religion. I was going to make this crazy screenplay. I have it all outlined with characters, conflicts, and a really cool ending. But I just don't want to write it because I know it's not going to get me anywhere. But just think of a movie like that from a nostalgia perspective. I know you would have to have the rights to Hulk Hogan to use his character, so of course you can't do it now. R.I.P. You would have to change things around, either a fake wrestler, which would be easier, or find somebody else. I wish Roddy Piper was still around. He would be perfect for that. You make a cult centered around Piper. The reason I wanted to have Hulk Hogan because he's the most well known, and he would bring in an audience. But in the movie, and I'll share this another day because about a year ago, 2 years ago, I had like a 2 hour talk like this about that, about how I would set up that movie if I actually wrote the screenplay. It's similar to Fight Club and some of the stories um, in that vein of Fight Club. That's what I compare it to. Um, but I don't want to go into that now. That would take another 2 hours to digest that. But what is the guy's name who wrote Fight Club? Because he has a book about cults. Author of Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk. I don't know how to say his name. Chuck Palahniuk. He published Fight Club in '96, and then it became a film by David Fincher. But he has a book called Survivor. Yeah, it's awesome. It was a book I read during 2020, Survivor. It's really fucking good. It's about a cult. That's how far I'm going to go because I forget most of it. But it's a kind of a savage satire about media culture and trying to stay in shape, celebrity culture. It's definitely worth rereading again for me. And that's kind of what I'm going for. Kind of a very satirical look at religion and the difference between a religion and a cult. How do you really maintain that level of independent thought in any of those instances, whether you're in a religion or a cult? Of course, there's different levels to it, but yeah, I don't want to go too in depth about that. I'll have another discussion later at some point about that idea of the Hulk Hogan movie. I called it the Cult of Hulk, but of course I'd have to change that now because unless you get permission to use a CGI version of Hulk Hogan, which would be kind of morbid, I feel like it would just make the audience sad if they see Hulk Hogan on screen. It would make them more sad nostalgically than happy to see him. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe it is a cool idea. Like the Tupac hologram or anything else they do with holograms. But most likely I would just have to make up a character in this fictional world was the most popular wrestler and give him a name and do it like that. The story's like completely done and I have it on paper outlined. So maybe I'll talk about it at a later date as a pitch. Like I could do it as a pitch, a real pitch. All of these were different because the scripts are already done, but it's still a sales pitch. Like in that case, the screenplay's already done. Everything else I've done so far are actual finished products for the most part. Sure, there could be changes here and there because I don't know how that really works. If a production company bought Seeds of Anarchy, they want to make that into a movie, but they want to change some geography things or some of the characters. Yeah, I'd have to really have that experience because I never dealt with stuff like that. Hopefully, it wouldn't be anything too major. If Hunter S. Thompson, I guess he was still alive when they made the Rum Diaries, I guess he was happy with how it came out. I don't really know how that. Maybe there was some conflict there. But I'm not comparing myself to Hunter S. Thompson. I think any writer, like the writer of Fight Club, I'm sure he had some input on how the movie was going to go, right? Did Chuck. This will be the last thing I look up. Did Chuck what? Chuck Palahniuk. I don't even know how to. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name, man. I've seen interviews with him, like podcasts, but I don't remember how to say his name. Palahniuk, Chuck Palahniuk, have input on the movie Fight Club. I don't know how that works. When a writer sells a book or a screenplay, how much influence do they have on the actual movie? Are they just like a consultant? Author Chuck Palahniuk was not heavily involved or highly supportive of the film adaptation. And while he did not write the screenplay, he was a consultant. All right, watching dailies during the film, recorded the DVD audio commentary. See, I never went that far into the Fight Club rabbit hole. Palahniuk, he's praised the film, admitting the filmmakers. All right, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. He was highly supportive of the film. I thought it was the opposite. So he famously praised the film, admitting the filmmakers successfully streamlined and even improved his original plot. That's pretty cool. That's what I would be hoping for, that I could work with people that see a similar vision as I do. But that's pretty interesting, yeah. I'm going to stop here. I don't feel like talking for another hour of nonsense. Tomorrow I might do my other idea for evolution of a song from Culture Warts, that punk album I wrote in like an hour this winter. No, I'm sorry, it's not from that. Disregard that statement. There's an album I wrote called Weaponized Sex. I think that's the one. And it has the song Moonlight Graham is my favorite human being. And that's the one I want to talk about. The more I think about it, I think it becomes more of a ska song with horns, like a Less Than Jake type of thing, or a breakdown at the end. That'll give me a chance to talk about some of my punk songs, though, tomorrow, and my love of Idols and Proto Martyr. And yeah, these are, I guess, basic post-punk bands, but they're still really good. The underground flavor isn't there in my life. I don't dig deep into the post-punk or any punk music. I don't go into underground scenes or see any shows, so I'm just relying on music that I hear and I like, whether it's mainstream or underground indie stuff. Because Idols got pretty big. They were on 88.5 in Philly. They were on, what's that, KEXP, is that what it's called? They had a really cool concert on YouTube. KEXP, what is that, Seattle? I think it's Seattle. Yeah. What station? 90, yeah, it's Seattle area and San Francisco. All right, that's pretty cool. But you go on KEXP, you could spend all day looking at old concerts on YouTube, and the Idols one is really good. My two favorite concerts on YouTube is the Idols wedding concert. Just look for that, and the Hooray for the Riff Raff from years ago in New Orleans. So YouTube is really valuable to fall in love with a band like that. But I think I hit everything I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to end this one a little bit shorter than usual. Back to the Prophet. If you want to read a quick read, you want some spirituality in your life, but you don't want to go to a seminar or learn how to meditate. Like, I'm kind of ADD with that stuff. I understand how hard it is to become a active practitioner in yoga or meditating. I did hot yoga for a month in January. I think, sometime this past winter, and it was really good. It's expensive. I was going to just try to teach myself, but I haven't gotten there. So I respect it. If you can learn to practice that daily yoga, meditation, maybe at a different time in my life, I'll be able to get there and learn those things. I want to have a more balanced lifestyle wherever I end up going. I want to be able to learn better ways to stay healthy. If I'm going to have to be singing, I need to learn ways to do that. Opening up my airway to make my voice sound more powerful or mellow or angry. It's a performance art that I never did before. So everything's a process, but if you don't want to go down those complicated ritualistic type of spiritual pathways, you don't see yourself meditating or doing yoga, and just read a book like The Prophet, because it could take you maybe 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast you read. And you could reread it and notice different things on the second time. It's one of those books, like Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, that a guideline or a way to handle some of the conflicts internally that become external conflicts, that you want to put your bullshit on other people. Why do you want to do that? What's inside of you driving you to live that life? Why am I afraid to trust people? I got plenty of issues of my own, but I'm trying to overcome that at this point. The best I can, I'm trying to overcome that. So yeah, if you're one of those people like me who you are kind of a ADD type at times in your life, and you don't want to spend a month or a year or 5 years becoming a martial artist or a yoga instructor, like to that level, because supposedly they can make a lot of money too if you become a yoga instructor, like real certified. Or meditate if you don't want to learn how to meditate, because a lot of people struggle with that, including myself. You don't want to pray, you don't go to church, you're looking for a void. Maybe you had religion in your youth and you don't have anything anymore. NFL's your religion, or music. Or I watched a short speech from The Contender where the actress is talking about how her religion is the halls of the House of Congress, or whatever it is. This courtroom is my religion. That's where I get my morals and my ethics and my motivation to live a good life. It's from the Constitution, or the path to live a free life and to have that available to all people in the world. The American global experiment. That's kind of the tone of that movie at the end. And I was feeling like that too a lot of times. I don't agree with everything she said, but a lot of it's true. That your religion is the courthouse, or the ability that, and again, they're not perfect people, but the founding fathers, whatever you want to put there. I know there's plenty of flaws there as well. But the founding fathers, their vision for a country that's free of kings and free of that discrimination, free, all men created equal. That's still the good baseline. Nobody got there yet, or we're working on it. People are working on it. It's a work in progress. But I don't even think back then they were writing these words to strive towards that. They weren't saying that that's how it was going to be. That's what it should be. And they couldn't live up to it. Of course, like, they wrote these words and then they automatically become hypocrites and contradict themselves. So it's hard to have that discussion because it makes it more of a devil's advocate, more of a complicated exploration. But the general sentiment of that speech at the end of The Contender is that like I guess she's being vetted to be vice president. I believe that's what it was. And I guess they're questioning because she's an atheist. Where I go down that line a lot myself. Maybe I can find it and read it because it is pretty good. If you never watched that movie, go check it out. It's a 2000 political drama. Jeff Bridges plays the president, and the vice presidential nominee is Lane Hansen. Yeah, it's pretty good. The contender ending speech. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I stand. It's only like 2 minutes. I thought it was longer. I stand for a woman's right to choose. I stand for the elimination of the death penalty. I stand for strong and growing armed forces because we must stomp out genocide on this planet. And I believe that that is a cause worth dying for. I stand for seeing every gun taken out of every home, period. That one gets a little crazy. I stand for making the selling of cigarettes to our youth a federal offense. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of, I don't know. Maybe that is right. I don't know, man. I just don't like the government playing mommy and daddy like that. But whatever. This is from the. Maybe I'll just read the last line. I stand for the separation of church and state, and the reason that I stand for that is the same reason that I believe our forefathers did. It is not there to protect religion from the grasp of government, but to protect our government from the grasp of religious fanaticism. Yeah, there you go. Nobody wants a theocracy, man. I may be an atheist, but that does not mean I do not go to church. I go to church. The church I go to is the one that emancipated the slaves and gave women the right to vote. I don't know who wrote this. It's a little cheesy. And whoever directed this, if you go watch this clip on YouTube, I think it's still on there, or watch this entire movie, you have the orchestration playing in the background, the real uplifting moment, like in Scent of a Woman, where Al Pacino gives that speech about rats. This country is becoming a nation of rats. Yeah, I can't do an Al Pacino voice. My church is the very chapel of democracy that we sit in together, and I do not need God to tell me what are my moral absolutes. I need my heart, my brain, and this church. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it's a good scene though. I get cynical about it now, but it has some good substance to it. 20 years later. All right, I'll stop there. I think I mentioned everything and some other bullshit. So tomorrow I'll talk about the Moonlight Graham song. Moonlight Graham is my favorite human being. I'll talk about some of my love of punk rock, Less Than Jake, and NoFX, and stuff like that. And how I see that song playing in the future. I haven't done one of these in a while because I was like, I'll just do it whenever I work on my songs and things evolve. But of course, I can't work on my songs right now, so it's not a reality. It's more of a. Still, it's how I hear the song in my head because I can't record it right now. So I'll do that tomorrow. Evolution of a Song number 3. Moonlight Graham is my favorite human being. Moonlight Graham from Field of Dreams. And it's supposed to be kind of a stupid song, but punk songs can be kind of funny like that. Never respect a man with a perm. That's probably why I got influenced to write a song like so stupid and absurd like that. Never trust a man with a perm. I think that's what it's called. Maybe I'll read those lyrics tomorrow. Never trust a fart. That sounds interesting. True stories of grown men who have accidentally pooped their pants. Oh, that's me included. Never trust a man with two first names with a pinky ring. Never fight a man with a perm. Yeah. That's by Idols from 2018, Joys and Active Resistance. So I'll talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, they do kind of get, even though it's like a very high octane song, it's about toxic masculinity and posturing and stuff like that. So it's interesting how they were able to form an album like that. Yeah, just go watch them. If you don't know Idols, I would recommend seeing them live. If you can't see them live, I never did either. Go watch them on YouTube. There's a concert where they're pretending to be at a wedding reception or something like that, and they just go fucking nuts. It's maybe like an hour long, and it's so good. Very well filmed. The cinematography, it's so good. But that's all for today. Maybe I'll continue in the future. Maybe I could look at other albums that are potentially concept albums and could be formed into animations and stuff. These three that I did, or four that I did so far, are the four most obvious ones. The Waitress from Mars, Songs from the Rhine, this one today, The Vulture Prince, and the one yesterday, Thoughts at a Funeral. Those four are obvious examples of showing potential for some kind of cinema connecting to the music, but I don't have too many that are that obvious. So I'll have to do some prior research and look back at my 50 albums and see what I'm forgetting. And yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for listening if people made it this far. And yeah, maybe I'll share some of these videos on my Substack that I was talking about so you get a better conception of what I view this album as.